Ray Dalio is an American billionaire investor and hedge fund manager who has served as co-chief investment officer of the world's largest hedge fund, called Bridgewater Associates, since 1985. Along the way, Dalio discovered a set of unique principles that have led to Bridgewater's exceptionally effective culture, and wrote a book called Principles that teaches you how to deal with the changing world order. In today's video, Ray Dalio, together with Bilyeu, discuss the topic of recession. What is going on today in the economy? What is causing this downfall, and how can we prepare for the upcoming recession? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and let's see what they have to say.
Well, pandemics come along occasionally, but anything that's important. Let me say the three most important circumstances that existed before we had the downturn, which was caused by a pandemic, but any downturn would have produced the same results. The three most important things that are happening in the world now are that we're at the end, late in a long-term debt cycle in which central banks cannot control monetary policy the same way. They can't lower interest rates. They can't get money to a lot of people who need the money in the traditional way. The important thing to know about this crisis, and that it happened in the 1930s, is that in order to get the checks that we're needing, a lot of people, a lot of companies need checks. Now, where will those checks come from? So there'll be checks from the government. The type of support we're going to receive is two types of support. Where's all this money come from? So the government, when they say, I'm going to pay more for unemployment insurance, or I'm going to give you a loan for a small business, or so on, where do they get the money from? Well, they either tax it, but if they tax it, that's bad. So the government, they can borrow it. That's what a deficit is. The government runs a deficit. And then the question is, who's going to borrow it when everybody's financially strapped? And the Federal Reserve says they have the power to print money, and they will say, I will borrow it, and I will lend you the money. So the Federal Reserve is lending the money, and it is also lending others the money. The main thing to know about this, stepping back for the big picture, is that every individual, every company, and every government has a certain amount of money that comes in the form of income, a certain amount of expenses, and then a certain amount of savings. So you do individually, and all your listeners do. And it works the same way for everyone, so that if their income falls and they to be less than their expenditures, they're in trouble unless they have a good savings. And then they go to the savings. So all around the world, there are lots of entities that are in trouble in that way. So the government, the two parts of the government, the U.S. government, two parts, want to give checks to people. Now, it's difficult to decide who gets it, who doesn't get it. But if they don't give checks to people or to companies, those will go bankrupt because they may not have enough savings. So you saw J. Crew just went bankrupt. And you'll see others go bankrupt because they don't have enough. And so when they go bankrupt, then that's a whole other process. So in order to prevent that, they have to give money. And so they print money. We call it print. There's not even paper much. It's digitally create money. And then that comes in the form of loans.
Okay, so basically they're digitally creating money, which they're allocating to the government, and then the government is deciding how to disperse those funds?
Yeah, the Federal Reserve will buy government bonds, so it's a transaction of buying it, and they will also buy private bonds.
Okay.
They might pick a company, many companies, and they'll say, I will buy your bonds, which is the equivalent, I will lend to you. And that's what happens.
Okay.
And that's happened through history. So what we're going through is the same process as happened in the 1930 to 1945 period. So as I was saying, there are three important things. That is one. The second is large wealth gap. Third is that we have a rising power in the form of China emerging to compete or challenge the United States leadership. So when you have these three things together, it's a challenging mix, and it's happened repeatedly. Less effective monetary and credit system makes it, they have to print a lot of money, can threaten the value of money. Second, when you have a large wealth gap and you have an economic downturn, people are more inclined to have conflict. So how that's dealt with, we're going to reconsider how we're going to, that wealth will be divided, and that'll change taxes and relationships. And then the third is we're no longer in a world order where the United States is the only dominant power. These three things existed, and the most important things existed. And then we had the downturn in terms of the virus. So you could think of the virus like being a tsunami that came, and if it went, and if we had no more of it, it still would have left a lot of economic damage. So in all different ways. So the economic damage has to be understood and dealt with.
So, knowing that, how can people be prepared for the coming recession is the ultimate question. Ray Dalio suggests the traditional, safe, and relatively easy way of dealing with this problem. Having savings and living life in a conservative way sounds challenging, but that's what Dalio recommends, so let's see what he has to say more.
Look at your income, your expenses, and your savings. And then do a stress test so that you get yourself secure. If you were to lose your income, or if the income were to fall beyond a certain level, and you play that out, maybe that means you go get unemployment insurance, or whatever. How long can you live in an acceptable lifestyle? And do you have a savings that is adequate for that? Okay, so what you do is you calculate, if I lived in a simpler lifestyle and I had this amount of earnings, how many months or years could I live acceptably? Then you look at what do you put the money in? What do you save in?
So that's it for today. If you enjoyed the content, please leave a like and consider subscribing. Also let us know in the comments below what you think will happen in the near future. Best of luck, and we will see you in the next Investalence video.